The rain pounded the Seattle streets like artillery fire, each drop exploding against the pavement. Marcus Wilson hunched his broad shoulders against the deluge, one hand gripping his worn leather jacket closed at the neck, the other firmly clasping his daughter's small fingers. Emma's pink raincoat shimmered under the streetlights as she hopped between puddles, her 7-year-old energy undampened by the weather. Marcus checked his watch, almost 9. Too late for a school night, but Emma's piano recital had run long and the bus had been delayed. Single parenthood meant constant compromise. The rain intensified sheets of water cascading from awnings and fire escapes above. Emma squealed as a torrent struck her hood. "Let's get home, kiddo. Just 3 more blocks." Emma tugged at his hand, stopping abruptly. "Dad, look." Marcus followed her gaze across the street. A woman in an evening gown stumbled along the sidewalk, one heel broken, collapsing onto the wet pavement. Her dark hair clung to her face, mascara running in black streaks down pale cheeks. Luxury cars sped past headlights, sweeping bright, then abandoning her to darkness. That lady fell. She needs help. Marcus hesitated. The woman's expensive dress and jewelry suggested someone from a different world, one that rarely intersected with his. She could be drunk, or on something. "Not our business, Em." But as he started to guide Emma away, his daughter's small voice cut through the rain's percussion. "Bo oi bae kinjupdo." The woman struggled to stand, wobbling precariously on one heel. A passing car splashed through a puddle, drenching her further. She shouted something inaudible over the storm's roar, her face contorted in anger or pain, maybe both. Marcus exhaled heavily, his breath visible in the cold air. "What am I teaching my kid if I just walk away? Wait here under the awning. Don't move." Marcus jogged across the street, approaching cautiously. Up close, the woman's dress revealed itself as a designer original, the kind he'd only seen in magazines. Despite being soaked through, it probably had cost more than his monthly rent. The woman glared up at him, eyes red-rimmed and defiant. "Just walk away, idiot." Marcus stood his ground, rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead. "Ma'am, you're clearly having a rough night. Let me help you up." The woman tried to wave him off, but her coordination failed her. She slipped again, landing hard on the sidewalk. A string of expensive pearls broke, scattering across the wet concrete like tiny moons. "I don't need your help." Her words slurred slightly, pride warring with vulnerability. Marcus crouched beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Maybe not, but you're going to catch pneumonia out here, and my daughter is watching. So humor me." Something in his calm, matter-of-fact tone seemed to penetrate her defenses. The woman's shoulders slumped slightly as the fight drained out of her. Marcus helped her to her feet, steadying her with a strong hand. "My name's Marcus. That's my daughter Emma across the street. Can I call someone for you?" The woman stared at him, raindrops mingling with what might have been tears. "My phone's dead, and I can't remember the address of where I was going." Marcus noticed her shivering. "Where do you live? I can get you a cab." She mumbled an address in an upscale neighborhood, but then shook her head. "Not there. Not tonight." Marcus glanced back at Emma, who watched them intently from beneath the safety of a storefront awning. His protective instincts warred with his desire to teach his daughter about compassion. "Look, our apartment is just a few blocks away. You can dry off, call someone, figure out your next move. No pressure, no expectations." The woman studied his face, searching for ulterior motives and finding none. Finally, she nodded, removing her broken heel. Marcus helped her across the street to Emma, whose eyes widened. "Emma, I'm sorry I didn't catch your name." Olivia Bennett." Emma's face brightened. "Like the princess in my book." "Are you a princess too?" Olivia's laugh came out brittle without humor. "Hardly. Just someone who made some poor choices tonight." Marcus guided them forward, Emma chattering about her piano recital, oblivious to the tension between the adults. As they rounded the corner, Emma whispered just loud enough for Marcus to hear, "Mom was lost in the rain too. Wasn't she, Dad?" Marcus's chest tightened at the unexpected connection his daughter had made. Rebecca had been caught in a sudden downpour the day they met 12 years ago. He'd offered her his umbrella outside the fire station. "Yeah, squirt." She was. Good memory. Olivia caught the exchange, her eyes flickering with curiosity, but she remained silent as they approached the brick apartment building. 5 floors. No elevator. Marcus apologized as they began climbing the stairs. Olivia kicked off their remaining heel climbing barefoot. They reached the 3rd floor landing, and Marcus unlocked the door to 3B. The apartment welcomed them with the lingering scent of that morning's coffee and the faint smell of sawdust that seemed permanently embedded in the walls. Emma darted inside, flicking on lights and shedding her wet raincoat in one fluid motion. Olivia paused in the doorway, taking in the modest space. The main room served as both living area and dining room, with a small galley kitchen visible through an archway. A hallway presumably led to bedrooms. The furniture wasn't new or matching, but everything was clean, organized, cared for. It's not much, Marcus acknowledged, hanging his jacket on a hook by the door. But it's home. Olivia stepped inside hesitantly, suddenly conscious of her dripping dress and bare feet. Marcus disappeared briefly, returning with a towel and a set of clothes. Bathroom's first door on the left. These might be big on you, but they're dry. My late wife's sweatpants and one of my shirts. Take your time. Olivia accepted the bundle, disappearing into the bathroom. Marcus turned his attention to Emma, helping her change into dry pajamas and warming milk for hot chocolate. By the time Olivia emerged, Emma was seated at the kitchen table with her mug drawing on a sketch pad. The transformation was striking. Without her makeup and evening wear, Olivia looked younger, more vulnerable. The sweatpants were indeed too large, rolled at the waist and ankles. Marcus's flannel shirt engulfed her frame, the sleeves pushed up to free her hands. Her feet were bare toenails, painted a deep burgundy, the only reminder of her earlier elegance. Marcus set a pot on the stove. I'm making soup. Nothing fancy, just something warm. Olivia stood awkwardly in the kitchen doorway. I'm imposing. I should call a car. In this weather, the soup's almost ready anyway. Sit, please. She relented, joining Emma at the table. The little girl pushed her drawing across the surface, three stick figures standing under a rainbow. For you to feel better. Olivia's hand trembled slightly as she accepted the drawing. Thank you, Emma. That's very kind. Marcus stirred the soup, watching the interaction with interest. Olivia Bennett clearly came from money. Her speech, her posture, even the way she held the crayon drawing, all spoke of privilege and refinement. What had happened tonight to leave her drunk and broken on a rainy saddle sidewalk? The apartment's modest dimensions allowed Olivia to survey the entire living space from her seat. Her eyes lingered on the wall where pencil marks tracked Emma's height over the years, next to them a faded mark that read, Rebecca 30. The bookshelf held an eclectic mix of titles, carpentry manuals, children's stories, firefighter training texts, and dog-eared paperback novels. On the mantel above a small electric fireplace stood framed photographs. Marcus in firefighter uniform. Emma as a toddler, and a beautiful woman with Emma's same bright smile. Rebecca, presumably. The photos told a story of a family that had once been complete. Marcus set bowls of soup on the table along with slices of bread. Emma dove in immediately, but Olivia hesitated. I don't usually eat this late. Marcus sat across from her. I bet you don't usually go swimming in evening gowns either. Special circumstances. A ghost of a smile crossed Olivia's face as she picked up the spoon. The soup was simple but good, vegetable with barley. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first spoonful hit her stomach. As they ate, Emma dominated the conversation with tales from her school day and piano recital. Marcus listened attentively, asking questions and offering encouragement. Olivia observed their interaction with something like wonder. The easy communication between father and daughter, the way Marcus automatically cut Emma's bread into smaller pieces, how Emma knew to bring him a napkin without being asked. This was what a real family looked like, not the cold mansion she'd grown up in, with hired staff and absent parents who communicated primarily through notes left with the housekeeper. When Emma finished eating, she yawned widely. Marcus checked his watch. Way past bedtime, squirt. Go brush your teeth. Emma slid from her chair but paused beside Olivia. Wait, I need to get something. She disappeared down the hallway, returning moments later with a well-loved stuffed rabbit. This is Mr. Whiskers. He makes me feel better when I'm sad. You can borrow him tonight, Em. Olivia took the worn toy with trembling hands, overwhelmed by the child's simple kindness. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll take very good care of him. Marcus tucked Emma in while Olivia sat alone at the table clutching the stuffed rabbit. Her penthouse apartment overlooked Elliott Bay, with furniture selected by a decorator and artwork chosen for investment value rather than emotional connection. Nothing in that sterile space had been offered with the pure intention of making someone feel better. Marcus returned to find Olivia staring at the rabbit, lost in thought. He cleared the dishes, giving her space. Finally, she spoke. Why did you help me? You don't know me. Marcus leaned against the counter, considering his answer. Because someone needed help. That's reason enough. Most people would have walked past. I wouldn't have blamed them. I was unpleasant. Marcus shrugged. Most people aren't responsible for teaching a 7-year-old what it means to be human. He glanced down the hallway toward Emma's room. I want her to grow up knowing that helping people isn't optional. It's who we are, or who we should be anyway. Are you always this? Good. Olivia's tone wasn't accusatory, but genuinely curious. Marcus laughed quietly. Not even close. But I try to be the person I want Emma to become. Some days I do better than others. He put on a kettle for tea, moving with the efficiency of someone accustomed to making the most of limited space. Would you like to tell me what happened tonight? No pressure if you don't. Olivia twisted the wedding band on her finger, a massive diamond that caught the light despite the dried rainwater still clinging to it. Corporate gala, annual event for my company. Everything was perfect until my fiancé James decided to announce our wedding date to everyone without consulting me first. When I confronted him afterward, he dismissed my concerns, said I was overreacting. So I walked out and ended up in the rain. Olivia nodded, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. I had the driver drop me off at a bar, then another bar. Then I was walking and my heel broke, and here we are. Marcus handed her a mug of tea. Well, you're welcome to the couch tonight. We can figure out the rest in the morning. Olivia accepted the mug, her manicured fingers incongruous against the chipped ceramic brushing against his calloused ones. Thank you for everything. That night, Olivia slept on the couch under a wool blanket, clutching Emma's stuffed rabbit. For the first time in years, she slept without nightmares, her breathing slow and steady. Marcus lay awake in his room, down the hall, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he had just invited into their quiet life. But when he heard Olivia's breathing slow and steady, no longer hitching with silent sobs, he knew he'd made the right choice. Some people needed saving not from danger, but from loneliness. And Marcus understood loneliness better than most. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting patterns across the small living room. Olivia blinked, awake, momentarily disoriented by unfamiliar surroundings. The events of the previous night came back in fragments: the gala, the argument, the rain, the kind stranger and his daughter. She sat up, running a hand through tangled hair. The apartment was quiet except for muffled sounds from the kitchen. Following the noise, she found Marcus at the stove, flipping pancakes while Emma bounced in her chair. Dad, that edge is burning. I know. You like it when they're crispy on the edge, right? Emma nodded enthusiastically, then spotted Olivia in the doorway. Good morning, Princess Olivia. Did Mr. Whiskers help you sleep? Olivia smiled self-consciously, tugging at the oversized shirt that hung past her knees. He did. Thank you for lending him to me. She joined them at the small wooden table, acutely aware of her disheveled appearance. Without makeup and borrowed clothes, she felt stripped of her usual armor. Marcus slid a plate of pancakes in front of her, slightly misshapen but smelling delicious. Hope you like maple syrup. It's real, not the corn syrup stuff. My one breakfast extravagance. Olivia couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for her without being paid to do so. Last night was the first time in years I slept without nightmares. Marcus froze his hand, stopping mid-pour as he was adding milk to Emma's cup. Those simple words hit him with unexpected force, reminding him of something Rebecca used to say after particularly bad days. The vulnerability in Olivia's voice, the quiet admission of pain, it touched something deep in his chest that he thought had died along with his wife. Emma, oblivious to the charged moment, pushed a messy crayon drawing across the table to Olivia. I made this for you this morning. It's us. The drawing showed 3 stick figures in front of what appeared to be an apartment building. One tall figure labeled Dad, one small figure labeled me, and a medium figure with long dark hair labeled Princess Olivia. They were all holding hands. Olivia carefully placed the drawing under her plate like it was a priceless work of art. It's beautiful, Emma. Thank you. Marcus watched the interaction, his heart lurching uncomfortably in his chest. He hadn't expected to feel anything beyond basic human compassion for the stranger they'd rescued. He turned back to the stove, focusing on the remaining pancake batter. After breakfast, Emma disappeared to get dressed for school. Olivia helped Marcus clear the table, their movements awkward in the small kitchen. I should call a car. Get out of your hair. Marcus nodded, though something in his expression suggested reluctance. Of course, your phone's probably charged by now. I plugged it in last night. He retrieved her phone from the living room. The screen showed 17 missed calls and 29 text messages, Mostly from James and Camille assistant. Olivia stared at the notifications without opening any of them. My clothes from last night, still pretty wet. I hung them up, but that dress looks like it needs professional cleaning. Olivia glanced down at her borrowed outfit. I can't exactly go home like this. Marcus hesitated, then offered Emma's. School is just a few blocks away. I need to drop her off, then I have errands to run. You're welcome to stay here until your clothes dry, or until someone brings you something else to wear. Olivia's thumb hovered over her phone, not quite ready to dive back into the world of demands and expectations those messages represented. If you're sure it's not an imposition. Before Marcus could answer, Emma bounded back into the room wearing a school uniform and carrying her backpack. Dad, can Princess Olivia walk to school with us? Olivia's face softened at the child's enthusiasm. I'd like that if it's okay with your dad. Marcus checked his watch. We leave in 10 minutes. There's a new toothbrush in the medicine cabinet if you need it. While Emma gathered her school supplies, Olivia ducked into the bathroom. The small space was neat, but clearly shared by a man and young girl. A step stool stood by the sink for Emma to reach. The shower curtain featured cartoon sea creatures. The medicine cabinet contained basic first aid supplies, children's vitamins, and a prescription bottle labeled Marcus Wilson, take as needed for pain. Olivia brushed her teeth and attempted to tame her hair with her fingers. Without makeup, her reflection looked younger than her 32 years, but also tired. Faint lines around her eyes spoke of stress more than age. She splashed water on her face and straightened her borrowed clothes as best she could. When she emerged, Marcus and Emma were waiting by the door. Marcus handed her a worn jacket that must have belonged to Rebecca. It might be a bit small, but it'll keep you warm. The trio made their way down the stairs and onto the morning streets. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean, glistening in the pale sunlight. Emma walked between them, occasionally taking both their hands to swing herself forward. Pedestrians gave Olivia curious looks. Her elegant bone structure and bearing contrasted sharply with the oversized clothes and lack of makeup. She found herself caring less than expected. There was something liberating about walking through Seattle anonymously unrecognized as Olivia Bennett, CEO of Bennett Events, one of the most successful event management companies on the West Coast. At the school gates, Emma hugged her father tightly, then surprised Olivia with an equally enthusiastic embrace. Will you still be at our house when I get home? The question caught Olivia off guard. She glanced at Marcus, who maintained a carefully neutral expression, leaving the decision entirely to her. I'm not sure, sweetheart, but thank you for sharing Mr. Whiskers with me. He's a very special rabbit. Emma beamed, then joined the stream of children entering the school building. Olivia and Marcus stood awkwardly for a moment before turning back toward the apartment. She seems like a remarkable child. Marcus smiled, pride evident in his expression. She's the best thing I've ever done. After her mom died, there were days when getting up for Emma was the only reason I kept breathing. How long has it been? 3 years. Fire in our old apartment building. Faulty wiring. The statement was simple, factual, but Olivia heard the weight behind each word. I'm so sorry. Marcus nodded his acknowledgement, then changed the subject. So, Olivia Bennett, last night you mentioned your company. What kind of business? As they walked, Olivia found herself describing Bennett Events, the company she'd built from a one-woman operation to a staff of 40, with offices in Seattle, San Francisco, and New York. She specialized in high-end corporate events, charity galas, and celebrity weddings with clients including tech giants and Hollywood stars. Marcus listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions that suggested genuine interest rather than polite conversation. By the time they reached his apartment building, Olivia realized she'd been talking freely in a way she rarely did, even with friends. Back in the apartment, Marcus checked Olivia's evening gown, which hung in the bathroom. Still damp. Do you want to call someone to bring you clothes? Or I can run you home in my truck. Olivia checked her phone messages, grimacing. James had progressed from concern to anger to threats about her position at the company. The last message warned that the board was meeting that afternoon to discuss recent erratic behavior. I should probably face the music, but not quite yet. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Would it be terribly imposing if I stayed a bit longer? Just until I figure out what to say to everyone? Marcus studied her for a moment, then shrugged. I need to head to my workshop for a few hours. Custom furniture orders don't build themselves. You're welcome to stay here. He showed her where to find coffee, the TV remote, and his modest book collection. I'm just in the converted garage out back if you need anything. Let yourself out whenever you're ready. After Marcus left, Olivia wandered around the apartment, coffee mug in hand. The space was small but thoughtfully arranged. Every piece of furniture served a purpose, often multiple purposes. The dining table doubled as Emma's homework station. The couch had built-in storage beneath the cushions. A window seat contained neatly labeled bins of toys. Most of the furniture showed signs of skilled craftsmanship, Marcus's work presumably. The coffee table featured intricate joinery at the corners. The bookshelf had custom-carved molding. Even Emma's bed, visible through her partially open door, had been handmade with a headboard shaped like an open book. Olivia's own apartment occupied the top floor of a luxury building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city and Puget Sound. The furniture came from exclusive designers, the art from up-and-coming galleries. Everything was sleek, impressive, and utterly impersonal. This small apartment, in contrast, contained a family's history in every corner. Photos documented Emma's growth. A jar on the kitchen counter held spare change for ice cream emergencies. Refrigerator magnets held school schedules, drawings, and a fire department newsletter. Curious about Marcus's workshop, Olivia glanced out the back window. A detached garage had been converted into a woodworking space. Through the open door, she could see Marcus at a workbench, measuring a piece of wood, completely absorbed in his task. His movements were precise, confident, a man who knew exactly what he was doing. When was the last time she'd felt that kind of certainty? Bennett events ran like clockwork. But success had brought complications. Board members who prioritized profit over quality. Clients who confused expense with value. A fiancé who saw her company as an addition to his business portfolio rather than her life's work. Olivia's phone buzzed with another message from Camille. Board meeting moved up, 2 p.m. James says crucial, you attend. Followed by, are you okay? This isn't like you. Wasn't it though? Walking away when things got difficult, her parents had certainly thought so, when she declined to join the family law firm choosing event planning, instead a career they considered frivolous. They'd predicted failure. Her success had silenced them, but never quite erased the sense that she was perpetually one misstep away from proving them right. Her gaze returned to Marcus in his workshop. There was something compelling about watching someone so completely in their element. His focus reminded her of her early days when she'd worked alone handling every aspect of her business, finding joy in the smallest details coming together perfectly. When had that joy been replaced by spreadsheets and growth projections? When had will this make people happy become secondary to will this increase our market share? Olivia set down her coffee cup. Decision made. She sent a brief message to Camille. Taking personal time. Reschedule board meeting. We'll explain later. Then silenced her phone and placed it face down on the counter. She found a notepad by the refrigerator and scribbled a note. Gone for a walk. Back soon. Thank you for everything. Oh, she placed it where Marcus would see it if he came inside, then slipped out the front door. Seattle in the morning light was a different city than the one she usually experienced. Without her usual driver, Olivia walked aimlessly, observing neighborhood details she typically missed from behind tinted car windows. A community garden tucked between buildings, an elderly couple walking matching terriers, a small bakery with a line stretching out the door. The bakery's aroma pulled her in. Inside, the warmth and scent of fresh bread enveloped her. A chalkboard menu listed simple offerings: sourdough, whole wheat, cinnamon rolls, today's soup. The woman behind the counter, gray-haired flower dusting her apron, greeted customers by name, remembering their usual orders. Olivia ordered a cinnamon roll, paying with one of the few bills in her wallet. She usually relied on her corporate card or had Camille handle payments. The pastry, served on a simple plate with no garnish or presentation, was the best thing she'd tasted in months. As she ate, Olivia observed the bakery's customers. A construction worker picking up lunch. A young mother with a toddler getting a special treat. Two elderly women meeting for coffee and conversation. Normal people living normal lives, finding joy in small pleasures rather than exclusive experiences. When was the last time she'd done something simply because it brought her happiness? Not because it impressed clients or enhanced her professional image. Even her engagement to James had been partly strategic, a merger of sorts between her events company and his investment firm, creating the perfect power couple. The thought stopped her mid-bite. Was that really how she saw her relationship, as a business arrangement? No wonder she'd reacted so strongly to his unilateral announcement of their wedding date. It wasn't just about being excluded from the decision, it was about the growing realization that perhaps she didn't want that decision made at all. After finishing her cinnamon roll, Olivia wandered through a small park, eventually making her way back to Marcus's neighborhood. She found herself drawn to the workshop behind his apartment. The door remained open, sawdust catching sunlight as it drifted through the air. Olivia hesitated at the entrance. Marcus looked up from the table he was sanding, surprise flickering across his features. "I thought you'd be gone by now." Olivia shrugged, suddenly self-conscious in her borrowed clothes. "I went for a walk. I hope that's okay." Marcus set down his sanding block. "Of course. Did you reach your people? I sent a message postponing the board meeting." "I'm taking a personal day." "Or two?" Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Instead, he gestured to the project before him, a small table with gently curved legs. "For the children's section at the library. They commissioned 6 of these." Olivia stepped closer, admiring the craftsmanship. The proportions were perfect for young readers, the edges rounded for safety, the surface smooth as silk. "It's beautiful, functional but still elegant. That's the goal." Marcus ran his hand over the wood. "Want to try?" Before Olivia could answer, he held out the sanding block. "It's nearly finished, so you can't really mess it up." Olivia hesitated, then took the block. Marcus positioned her hands correctly, showing her how to sand with the grain. The wood felt warm beneath her fingers, the repetitive motion strangely soothing. "That's it. You've got a good touch." Olivia continued sanding, focusing on the tactile sensation, so different from tapping on keyboards or swiping through presentations. The physical nature of the work engaged her senses completely. The scent of wood, the rhythm of sanding, the gradual transformation beneath her hands. "What made you become a carpenter after being a firefighter, I mean?" Marcus leaned against the workbench, watching her technique. "I built things as a hobby even when I was with the department. After the fire, after Rebecca, I needed something that created rather than destroyed. Something that would last." He picked up a chisel, turning it in his scarred hands. "There's something honest about working with wood. It doesn't lie to you. It doesn't pretend to be something it's not. The grain tells you exactly what it can and can't do. You just have to listen." Olivia thought about her own career, the constant performance, the strategic relationships, the careful image management. When was the last time she'd done anything honest? "What about you?" Marcus asked. "Why events?" Olivia continued sanding as she considered the question. "I've always been good at organization, making complicated things appear effortless. My parents wanted me to be a lawyer like them, but I watched how miserable they were, how they missed every important moment in my life because they were always working." She paused, the irony striking her. "So instead, I built a career where I create perfect moments for strangers while having no life of my own." "Not exactly a victory, is it?" Marcus shrugged. "You built something from nothing. That's always an achievement. Maybe you just need to remember why you started." The afternoon passed quickly as Marcus showed Olivia basic woodworking techniques. She helped sand the remaining tables, learning to feel for rough spots with her fingertips. When Emma returned from school, she found them in the workshop sawdust, coating Olivia's borrowed clothes, a small wooden box, taking shape under her inexperienced hands. "Princess Olivia, you're still here?" Emma dropped her backpack and rushed over. "Are you helping Dad make magic?" Marcus laughed. "It's not magic, Squirt. Just patience and practice." Emma examined Olivia's project critically. "It's a good box. What's it for?" Olivia hadn't considered a purpose. "What do you think it should be?" For Emma thought for a moment, her face serious. "Treasures. Everyone needs a place for treasures." As the evening approached, Olivia knew she should leave. Call her driver, return to her real life, deal with the messages accumulating on her phone. Instead, she found herself in Marcus's kitchen attempting to help with dinner. Her culinary skills were limited. She typically ate at restaurants or ordered in, but Emma assigned her the task of washing vegetables, which seemed manageable. The domesticity of the scene struck her forcefully. Marcus moving confidently through the small kitchen. Emma setting the table, remembering napkins without being reminded. Olivia finding her place within their established routine, a space they created for her without comment or complaint. Dinner was simple pasta with vegetables and chicken, but the conversation made it memorable. Emma regaled them with school stories, her animated expressions and dramatic pauses suggesting a natural performer. Marcus shared news about a community center renovation he was bidding on. Olivia found herself describing her worst event disaster, a celebrity wedding, where the cake had collapsed spectacularly, making Emma giggle uncontrollably. After dinner, while Emma worked on homework, Marcus and Olivia stepped out onto the small balcony overlooking the neighborhood. The evening air carried a chill, but after the warmth of the kitchen, it felt refreshing. City lights twinkled around them, stars beginning to appear overhead. Olivia spoke first, her voice quiet. I grew up in a mansion with 12 bedrooms. My parents threw parties every weekend, but I was so alone. She leaned against the railing, looking out at the modest homes and apartment buildings surrounding them. They only saw me as a tool, something to be shaped and displayed. I built a company from nothing because I thought success would prove I was worth something. Her voice cracked slightly, but the higher I climbed, the lonelier I became. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, then he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. 3 years ago, there was a fire. Old apartment building, faulty wiring. I was first on scene. He looked down at his scarred hands. Rebecca, my wife, she'd gone back in odd to get Emma's favorite blanket. I told her to wait, but she didn't listen. Olivia reached out instinctively, placing her hand over his scarred one. By the time I got to her, the smoke was too thick. I carried Emma out first, went back for Rebecca. Found her collapsed near the stairs. His voice broke. She looked at me and said, "Take care of our girl." Those were her last words. Tears ran down Olivia's face. "I'm so sorry. I quit the fire department the next day. Couldn't do it anymore. We moved here to start over." He looked up at Olivia, his eyes reflecting the city lights. But starting over doesn't mean the pain goes away. It just means you learn to carry it. They sat in silence, two broken people sharing space. Somehow the silence wasn't empty, it was full of understanding. Emma appeared in the doorway clutching art supplies. "Can Princess Olivia help me make decorations for the balcony?" Over the next hour, they strung up paper lanterns and hung wind chimes made from old silverware. Emma chattered constantly. Olivia laughed at her stories, and Marcus watched them both with something that felt dangerously close to hope. As the night deepened and Emma went to bed, Olivia stood at the balcony railing, looking out at the city lights. "In my world, everything has a price. Success costs your relationships. Power costs your integrity. Wealth costs your soul." She turned to look at Marcus, who stood beside her. "But here in this tiny apartment, with the creaky floors and mismatched furniture, I feel richer than I've ever felt in my life." Marcus studied her face in the dim light. "Funny, I look at you in your expensive clothes and your CEO title, and I see someone who's been paying prices they shouldn't have had to pay." "Maybe we're both right," Olivia whispered. Later, after Marcus had gone to bed, Olivia sat alone on the balcony, her phone in hand. The messages had grown increasingly frantic, then angry. James threatened her position, her reputation, their relationship. The board questioned her commitment. Clients worried about ongoing projects. Her world was imploding, yet sitting there in borrowed clothes, breathing in the night air scented with the neighbor's jasmine plant, Olivia found it difficult to care with her usual intensity. One impulsive decision, walking out of a gala, had somehow led her here to this moment of clarity. What would happen if she didn't go back? If she stepped away from Bennett events, from James, from the entire carefully constructed life that felt increasingly like a beautiful empty shell? The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it brought a strange sense of peace, like setting down a heavy burden she'd carried so long she'd forgotten it wasn't part of her. Olivia unclasped the diamond bracelet she still wore, the only piece of jewelry that hadn't been removed before her rainy walk. It glittered coldly in her palm, beautiful and meaningless. She slipped it into the small wooden box she'd made that afternoon, a treasure box according to Emma. Though what constituted a treasure suddenly seemed open to interpretation. Inside the apartment, Emma's drawing lay on the counter where Olivia had carefully placed it. 3 stick figures holding hands. A family created through a child's imagination and wishful thinking. Olivia traced the figures with her finger lingering on the one labeled Princess Olivia. For years, she'd built perfect moments for others while her own life remained on hold. Perhaps it was time to create something for herself, something real, something lasting. Something with room for a little girl's drawings and handmade wooden boxes and quiet conversations on small balconies. Olivia tucked the drawing into the pocket of her borrowed shirt right over her heart. Tomorrow would bring decisions and consequences. For tonight, she would sleep on a stranger's couch, surrounded by evidence that a different kind of life was possible. A life where success was measured not in acquisitions, but in connections. Where wealth came from what you gave rather than what you accumulated. Where home wasn't defined by address or square footage, but by the people who waited for you at the table. The kind of life that couldn't be planned or managed or arranged into perfect symmetry. The kind that grew organically from small, honest moments. The kind she'd been too busy to notice she was missing. Olivia curled up on the couch, pulling the wool blanket over her shoulders. Emma's stuffed rabbit, Mr. Whiskers, sat beside her pillow, his button eyes somehow knowing. Outside, the wind chimes they'd made together tinkled softly in the night breeze, a gentle lullaby as Olivia drifted into dreamless sleep. 5 days passed. Olivia remained at Marcus's apartment, her temporary refuge becoming something more complicated. The borrowed sweatpants and flannel shirt gave way to simple clothes purchased from a nearby store, jeans, t-shirts, a cardigan. Basic necessities bought with cash withdrawn before James could freeze her accounts. Each morning she told herself she would leave. Each evening found her still there washing dishes alongside Marcus or helping Emma with homework. A strange domesticity developed. Olivia learned to make pancakes without burning them. Marcus carved space on his bookshelf for her few purchases, a mystery novel, a sketch pad, a travel guide to places she'd planned events, but never actually seen. Emma delighted in having another adult to read to her at bedtime, to braid her hair, to listen to her endless stories about school friends and imaginary adventures. Olivia kept her phone charged, but rarely answered it. The message count grew until she stopped checking. Only once did she respond a terse email to the Bennett events board stating she was taking a personal leave of absence, effective immediately. The corporate lawyers could sort out the rest. For the first time in years, Olivia felt herself breathing without the weight of expectations pressing against her chest. But reality waited. It always did. The morning dawned crisp in clear sunlight, slanting through the kitchen window as Olivia stirred pancake batter. Emma sat at the table, swinging her legs as she colored a picture. Marcus entered from the bathroom, his hair damp from the shower, the scent of soap trailing behind him. They moved around each other with the ease of a family, though none of them acknowledged the word. Emma looked up from her drawing. "Can we go to the park after school?" "The one with the big slide." Olivia glanced at Marcus, still uncertain of her place in making such decisions. He nodded almost imperceptibly, a small gesture of inclusion that felt monumental. "I think that sounds perfect. I'll bring my new sketchbook." Marcus poured coffee into 3 mugs, regular for himself and Olivia, mostly milk, with a splash of coffee for Emma. "That special order from Portland arrives today. I'll need to be at the workshop all afternoon." Emma's face fell slightly, but Olivia jumped in. "Then it's just us girls at the park. We can surprise your dad with dinner after." The child's expression brightened immediately. "Can we make spaghetti with the sauce from scratch like you showed me?" Olivia felt a warmth spreading through her chest at the simple request. To be needed for ordinary things, cooking, park visits, bedtime stories, was a novel experience. Her entire career had been built on being exceptional, indispensable for grand occasions. No one had ever valued her ability to make tomato sauce or push a swing. The morning routine unfolded with practiced harmony: breakfast, teeth brushing, gathering school supplies. Marcus and Olivia walked Emma to school, then returned to the apartment in comfortable silence. At the door, Marcus hesitated. "You're good with her. Natural." Olivia looked away, embarrassed by the compliment. "She makes it easy. She's an extraordinary child." Marcus studied Olivia's face, seeing beyond the CEO to the woman beneath. "Sometimes we break things to rebuild them better. I do it with furniture that needs restoring. You might be doing it with your life." The words hung in the air between them, neither accusation nor encouragement, simply observation. Marcus continued into the apartment, leaving Olivia to consider the implications. Was she rebuilding or merely hiding? Creating something new or avoiding the inevitable confrontation with her old life? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, an email notification. Force of habit made her check it. The subject line sent a chill through her body. Emergency board meeting, CEO removal proceedings. They were going to fire her, replace her at the company she'd built from nothing. Her fingers trembled as she opened the email, scanning its formal language for the human intention beneath. The board had convened an emergency session citing abandonment of duties and erratic behavior unbecoming of leadership. The meeting was scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Olivia leaned against the hallway wall, suddenly dizzy. She'd known there would be consequences for walking away, but the reality hit harder than anticipated. Bennett Events wasn't just her company, it was her identity, her achievement, her proof that she mattered. Without it, who was she? Marcus appeared in the doorway, concern etching lines around his eyes. Everything okay? Olivia straightened, years of boardroom negotiations kicking in automatically. The practiced smile, the composed demeanor. Nothing important, just work. She slipped her phone back into her pocket, the action symbolic of a larger decision. Not today. Today belonged to this strange new world she'd stumbled into, a world of park visits and homemade sauce and a child's laughter. Reality would claim her soon enough. The day passed in a blur of ordinary moments that felt extraordinary precisely because of their ordinariness. Olivia spent the morning in Marcus's workshop sanding a bookshelf while he worked on a custom dining table. They spoke little, the rhythmic sounds of woodworking filling the space between them. There was comfort in the physical labor and seeing immediate results from her efforts. At noon, Olivia walked to the small bakery she discovered during her first solo exploration of the neighborhood. The owner, a gray-haired woman named Susan, now greeted her by name. It was strange being recognized not as Miss Bennett from that event company, but simply as Olivia, who likes the cinnamon rolls. Carrying a paper bag containing lunch, Olivia detoured through the neighborhood. The small community garden she'd noticed before had an elderly man tending the plots. He waved as she passed, and Olivia found herself stopping to admire the early spring vegetables pushing through the soil. My wife started this garden 20 years ago, the man explained without prompting. Been keeping it up since she passed. Helps me feel close to her watching things grow. Olivia nodded, understanding the sentiment more than she would have a week ago. Something about the simple dedication touched her deeply. Have you thought about expanding it? There seems to be space on the south side. The old man's eyes brightened at her interest. Been wanting to add a children's section. Teach the local kids about growing food. But it's hard for these old bones to break new ground. Olivia found herself offering to help, surprising herself as much as the gardener. I know a 7-year-old who would love to learn about gardening, and her father is pretty handy with tools. The promise felt significant, an acknowledgement that she intended to stay at least long enough to see seeds planted and possibly sprouted. A commitment to the future measured in growing seasons rather than fiscal quarters. The afternoon brought Emma from school bubbling with stories about a classroom turtle and a math test she'd aced. They walked to the park hand in hand, the child skipping occasionally when excitement overcame her. At the playground, Olivia sat on a bench sketchpad, open but forgotten, as she watched Emma navigate the social dynamics of the play structure. Another mother settled beside her, nodding in Emma's direction. Your daughter is adorable. Those curls are going to be a handful when she's a teenager. The assumption startled Olivia. She should have corrected it immediately, explained that Emma wasn't hers. But something stopped her. Not dishonesty, but a reluctance to dismiss the connection so definitively. She's an amazing kid, Olivia replied, sidestepping the misunderstanding without directly addressing it. And yes, hair management is already a morning adventure. The conversation drifted to school districts and after-school activities. Olivia found herself engaged in a world she'd never considered, the daily concerns of parents, the small triumphs and challenges of raising children. It was so far removed from her usual discussions of marketing strategies and profit margins, yet she found it equally complex and far more meaningful. When Emma tired of the playground, they walked to a small grocery store. Olivia let her select vegetables for the promised spaghetti sauce, explaining how to check tomatoes for ripeness and why fresh basil made all the difference. In the checkout line, Emma leaned against Olivia's side, a casual gesture of trust and affection that made Olivia's throat tighten unexpectedly. Back at the apartment, they prepared dinner together. Emma stood on a stool at the counter, carefully tearing basil leaves, while Olivia diced onions and garlic. The kitchen filled with aromatic steam, windows fogging slightly as the sauce simmered. Emma set the table without being asked, placing a small vase of flowers she'd picked at the park in the center. Marcus returned as the sauce reached perfection, the rich scent greeting him at the door. He paused on the threshold, taking in the scene, Olivia and Emma laughing as they twirled pasta onto forks, the table set with more care than usual, music playing softly from Olivia's phone. For a moment, pain flashed across his features. Rebecca should have been there creating this tableau of domestic harmony. But the pain passed, replaced by something more complex, gratitude mixed with caution, happiness threaded with uncertainty. The evening passed with dinner and games and bedtime rituals. After Emma was asleep, Marcus and Olivia retreated to the balcony, their usual spot for adult conversation. The spring night carried a slight chill, but neither seemed to notice. Stars punctuated the urban sky, competing with street lights and apartment windows. Olivia broke the silence, her voice low. The board is meeting tomorrow to remove me as CEO. Marcus didn't respond immediately, giving the information the gravity it deserved. How do you feel about that? Terrified, relieved, angry, liberated, all of it at once. I've been Bennett events for so long, and I'm not sure who Olivia is without it. Marcus considered this, his fingers drumming lightly on the railing. Maybe that's the point. Maybe you need to find out. Olivia stared at the city lights, each representing lives being lived in parallel to her own. Thousands of stories unfolding simultaneously, each person, the protagonist of their own narrative. Her problems, significant as they felt, were just one thread in a vast tapestry. I should fight it. I built that company from nothing, worked 18-hour days for years, sacrificed everything. Marcus's voice remained gentle, non-judgmental. What would winning look like? Going back to the life that drove you to walk away in the rain. The question struck Olivia like a physical blow. She'd been so focused on the principle, the injustice of being pushed out of her own company, that she hadn't considered the practical reality of winning. Would she return to the penthouse that never felt like home? To James, who'd seen her as an acquisition rather than a partner? To endless galas and meetings and conference calls that left her hollow? I don't know who I am without Bennett events, she whispered finally, but I'm starting to wonder if I ever knew who I was with it. The next morning brought a crystalline clarity to Seattle, the kind of spring day that made even concrete and glass seem vibrant. Olivia woke early before Marcus or Emma stirred. She'd barely slept, her mind churning with possibilities and fears. The board meeting loomed at 2 p.m., a reckoning she couldn't indefinitely postpone. In the small bathroom, Olivia studied her reflection. 10 days away from her usual life had changed her subtly. Her face looked softer without the perfect makeup she'd worn like armor. A few freckles had emerged from hours in Marcus's sun-drenched workshop. Her hands, once manicured to flawless precision, now showed signs of work, a small callus forming on her palm from sanding a broken nail from gardening with the elderly neighbor. She looked more human, less perfect, more real. Olivia opened her phone's calendar, the habit so ingrained she'd continued checking it daily despite ignoring most notifications. Today would have been filled with back-to-back meetings, a client lunch, preparations for an upcoming tech conference. Instead, only the board meeting stood starkly against the empty hours. A new email arrived as she watched her assistant Camille breaking protocol to warn her. James had engineered the coup, convincing key board members that Olivia's breakdown rendered her unfit for leadership. He'd already drafted press releases announcing his temporary assumption of CEO duties. The betrayal stung, but not as deeply as it should have. Their relationship had always contained an element of competition, a power dynamic that shifted with each success or setback. Still, she'd believed they were building something together personally and professionally. Apparently, James had been constructing an escape hatch all along. Olivia dressed in the simple clothes she'd purchased, jeans, a blue blouse, flat shoes. She could have retrieved business attire from her apartment, made the effort to armor herself in the trappings of corporate power. The decision to appear, as she now was, felt like a statement, though she wasn't entirely sure what she was declaring. When Marcus entered the kitchen, Olivia was already brewing coffee. He paused, reading her expression with the intuition of someone who'd spent years assessing emergency situations. Today's the day. It wasn't a question, but Olivia nodded anyway. The board meeting is at 2. I should be there. Marcus poured coffee into a travel mug, his movements deliberate. I can drive you downtown if you want. The offer touched her. That would be helpful. Thank you. They prepared breakfast together, moving around the small kitchen with practiced coordination. When Emma joined them, sleep-rumpled and yawning, Olivia felt a pang of sadness. Whatever happened today would change this fragile arrangement that had come to mean so much to her. During the walk to school, Emma sensed the shift in atmosphere. The adults were quieter than usual, their smiles a bit forced. At the gates, she hugged Marcus fiercely, then turned to Olivia with unusual solemnity. Are you going away? The question pierced Olivia's carefully maintained composure. She crouched to Emma's level, meeting her eyes directly. I have an important meeting today. I'm not sure what will happen afterward. Emma's small face scrunched with concern. But you'll come back to read my bedtime story. Olivia glanced up at Marcus, who watched them with an unreadable expression. He offered no guidance, leaving the response entirely to her. I'll do my very best, Olivia promised finally. And if I can't make it tonight, I'll make it up to you with 2 stories tomorrow. The answer seemed to satisfy Emma, who nodded gravely before skipping into the school building. Olivia straightened her throat tight with emotion. Marcus broke the tension with practicality. We should stop by your place so you can get anything you need. The drive to Olivia's penthouse passed in companionable silence. Seattle's neighborhoods shifted from modest residential to increasingly upscale urban as they approached downtown. Marcus's battered truck drew curious glances from doormen and valets accustomed to luxury vehicles. Olivia's building rose 40 stories above Elliott Bay glass and steel, reflecting the water and sky. The lobby featured marble floors and abstract sculptures, the elevator whisper quiet as it ascended to the top floor. Marcus said nothing, but Olivia could feel his assessment of this other life she'd built. The penthouse revealed itself as the elevator doors opened directly into a private foyer. Minimalist furniture in neutral tones, floor-to-ceiling windows, displaying panoramic views, original artwork selected for investment potential rather than emotional resonance. Everything pristine, perfect, and utterly impersonal. Olivia moved through the space with a strange detachment, as if touring a stranger's home. Make yourself comfortable. I'll just grab a few things. In her bedroom, she quickly collected essentials, her laptop, financial documents, comfortable shoes. She changed into a simple black dress and blazer for the board meeting, a compromise between her new self and professional necessity. As she packed a small bag with additional clothes, her eyes fell on the engagement ring sitting in its velvet box on the nightstand. James had proposed at a charity gala in front of hundreds of Seattle's elite. The 4-carat diamond had been selected to impress onlookers rather than reflect Olivia's taste. She'd accepted with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, understanding that the merger of their personal and professional lives made strategic sense. Romance had been secondary, if considered at all. Olivia slipped the ring into her pocket rather than onto her finger, one decision at a time. In the living room, she found Marcus standing by the windows, taking in the view of Puget Sound stretching to the horizon. Her world laid bare before him, the wealth, the status, the careful curation of an enviable life. Quite a different perspective from my place, he observed without judgment. Olivia joined him at the window, seeing her chosen habitat through his eyes. It is beautiful, but sometimes I think I selected it for the impression it makes on others rather than how it makes me feel. Marcus turned to face her, his expression serious. What do you want, Olivia? Not what you think you should want or what others expect. What do you actually want? The question hung between them, deceptively simple yet profound in its implications. Olivia had spent her career anticipating others' desires, curating experiences to fulfill expectations. She'd become so adept at satisfying clients' wishes that she'd somehow misplaced her own. I want, she began, then faltered. I want to feel how I've felt this past week, like I'm actually living, not just performing a role. Like what I do matters on a human scale, not just a corporate one. The admission felt dangerous, like stepping off a cliff without knowing the depth of the water below. Marcus nodded, neither encouraging nor discouraging her revelation. Then maybe today isn't about fighting to keep what you had. Maybe it's about negotiating for what you need. The Bennett Events headquarters occupied 3 floors of a sleek office building in downtown Seattle. As Marcus pulled up to the entrance, Olivia felt a flutter of anxiety. Employees would be watching, speculating, judging her appearance after her unexplained absence. You don't have to come in, she told Marcus. This could get ugly. His hands remained on the steering wheel, eyes forward. I'll wait, however long it takes. The simple promise steadied her. Olivia straightened her shoulders, adjusted her blazer, and stepped into the persona she'd crafted over years of business negotiations. Confidence without arrogance, strength without inflexibility, the perfect balance of authority and approachability. The lobby fell silent as she entered. The receptionist, a young woman named Taylor, who'd started as an intern, gaped openly before recovering her professional demeanor. Ms. Bennett, we weren't sure. The board is already gathered in the main conference room. Olivia nodded her acknowledgement, proceeding to the elevator with measured steps. Employees watched from cubicles and office doorways, whispering as she passed. She caught fragments, disappeared for over a week. And James said she had a breakdown. And board voting today. The conference room doors stood closed, voices murmuring within. Olivia paused, hand on the handle, gathering herself for what would come next. Then, with a decisive motion, she pushed the doors open and stepped inside. 8 board members sat around the polished table along with James and the company's legal counsel. Conversation ceased abruptly as all eyes turned to her. James recovered first, his handsome features arranging themselves into a mask of concerned relief. Olivia, thank God. We've been worried sick. He moved as if to embrace her, but Olivia sidestepped smoothly, addressing the room at large. I understand you've called this meeting to discuss leadership concerns. I appreciate the opportunity to address them directly. Her calm professionalism seemed to disarm them momentarily. She took advantage of the silence to claim the empty chair at the head of the table, her usual seat, though James had clearly been occupying it before her arrival. As James and several board members exchanged glances, Olivia opened her laptop with deliberate movements. I've prepared some thoughts on the company's direction and my role going forward. But first, I'd like to hear the board's specific concerns. Harold Whitman, the oldest board member and one of the company's earliest investors, cleared his throat. Olivia, while we appreciate your contributions to Bennett Events, your recent behavior has raised serious questions about your judgment and stability. Abandoning a major client event without an explanation, disappearing for over a week, ignoring communications from this board and from clients. Frankly, it appears you've had some sort of breakdown. Olivia met his gaze steadily. I understand how my actions might appear from the outside. What happened at the gala was unplanned and unprofessional. For that, I apologize. James leaned forward, his voice modulated to convey compassion, undermined by ambition. We're all concerned for your well-being, Olivia. The pressures of leadership can become overwhelming. There's no shame in stepping back to focus on your health. His strategy was transparent, position her removal as a compassionate act rather than a power grab. Olivia might have fallen for it a week ago, might have defended herself with desperate intensity, playing directly into the narrative of an unstable woman unable to control her emotions. Instead, she smiled slightly. Thank you for your concern, James, but I'm actually healthier now than I've been in years. She turned her attention back to the board members. What I've realized during my absence is that Bennett Events has reached a crossroads. We've achieved remarkable success following our current model, but the question is, where do we go from here? For the next 30 minutes, Olivia outlined a vision for the company's future that she hadn't known she possessed until the words emerged. A shift from pure corporate events toward more community-focused initiatives, strategic partnerships with nonprofits, a work culture that valued creativity and sustainability over relentless expansion. As she spoke, Olivia watched the room divide. Some board members, particularly the younger ones and those with backgrounds outside traditional corporate structures, showed increasing interest. Others, including James and Harold, grew visibly concerned. James interrupted finally, his patience exhausted. This is all very inspirational, Olivia, but it represents a fundamental departure from the business model that has made us successful. The board hasn't authorized such a dramatic shift in direction. Olivia nodded, acknowledging the truth of his statement. You're absolutely right. That's why I'm proposing a restructuring. She opened a document on her laptop, projecting it onto the screen at the end of the room. Bennett Events would be divided into 2 divisions, Bennett Corporate maintaining the existing high-end business model, and Bennett Community pursuing the new initiatives. Each would have separate leadership and financial structures while sharing resources and brand recognition. What I'm suggesting is that James assumes the role of CEO for Bennett Corporate, where his skills and vision align perfectly with client expectations. James blinked clearly, not expecting this concession. And I would head Bennett Community as a separate division, building something new while maintaining the brand integrity we've all worked so hard to establish. The board erupted in overlapping conversations, arguments flying across the table. Olivia sat quietly, letting them process the proposal. She'd thrown them off balance, offering a solution that addressed their concerns while preserving her connection to the company she'd founded. After heated discussion, Harold called for a brief recess to consider the proposal. As board members filtered out of the room, James remained behind, his expression fluctuating between suspicion and calculation. What game are you playing, Olivia? Last week you disappeared without a word. Now you're voluntarily giving up control of the company's primary business. Olivia met his gaze directly. I'm not playing games. I'm choosing a different path. James studied her, trying to identify the trap or trick. They'd been engaged for 8 months together for nearly 2 years. Yet in this moment she realized how little he truly knew her, how little she'd allowed anyone to know. And us, what about our engagement, our plans? Olivia removed the diamond ring from her pocket, placing it on the conference table between them. The stone caught the light, fracturing it into tiny rainbows across the polished wood. I think we both know that was always more about business than love. James stared at the ring, his expression hardening. First you abandon our company, now our relationship. You're throwing away everything we've built together. Olivia shook her head, the sad smile touching her lips. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm making room for something better. When the board reconvened, the atmosphere had shifted. Several hours of negotiation followed, hammering out details of the proposed restructuring. By late afternoon, a tentative agreement had been reached. James would assume leadership of Bennett Corporate, while Olivia would launch Bennett Community with a smaller but dedicated team and budget. The legal documents would take weeks to finalize, but the immediate crisis had been resolved. Olivia would retain a connection to the company she'd built while creating space for a new venture aligned with her evolving priorities. It wasn't a complete victory, but neither was it defeat. It was transformation breaking to rebuild better. As the meeting concluded, board members filed out with varying expressions of satisfaction, confusion, or resignation. James departed without a backward glance, the abandoned engagement ring presumably tucked into his pocket. Olivia remained seated, processing the day's events and their implications. Her assistant Camille entered, hesitantly, relief evident on her young face. Ms. Bennett, it's good to have you back. The office has been chaos without you. Olivia smiled at the young woman who'd been her right hand for 3 years. Actually, Camille, I'd like to discuss your role in the restructuring. I'll be building a new team for Bennett Community, and I could use someone with your organizational skills and creativity. As they discussed possibilities, Olivia felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The path forward wouldn't be easy, convincing clients to embrace a new vision, building partnerships with community organizations, redefining success beyond profit margins. But for the first time in years, she felt genuinely excited about her work's potential impact. Outside, the afternoon had mellowed into early evening, golden light slanting between downtown buildings. Marcus waited as promised, his truck an incongruous sight among the luxury vehicles in the executive parking area. He straightened as Olivia approached, his expression questioning. So, you still a CEO? Olivia laughed, the sound surprisingly light after the tension of the day. Technically, yes, but of a much smaller operation with much bigger aspirations. During the drive back to his neighborhood, Olivia explained the compromise she'd negotiated. Marcus listened attentively, asking clarifying questions, but offering neither judgment nor advice. When they parked outside his building, he turned to her with a thoughtful expression. What happens now? The question encompassed far more than business arrangements. In the span of less than 2 weeks, Olivia had walked away from her engagement, transformed her company, and inserted herself into Marcus and Emma's carefully balanced lives. None of these changes could remain in limbo indefinitely. Olivia gazed at the modest apartment building that had become more of a home to her than her expensive penthouse ever had. I need to find a place to live. My own place not too far from here. And I need to build a team for Bennett Community. And I promised Emma I'd read her bedtime story tonight. Marcus smiled at the prioritization that placed his daughter's bedtime routine alongside major life decisions. And after that, Olivia felt a flutter of nervousness, an emotion she rarely experienced in business, but found increasingly common in Marcus's presence. After that, I was hoping we could figure it out together. Day by day, it wasn't a declaration of love, they weren't there yet, but an acknowledgement of possibility, of potential, of choosing a direction without knowing the exact destination. Marcus considered this, his expression serious, before warming into a smile that reached his eyes. Day by day works for me. That evening, Olivia read Emma not one but 2 bedtime stories as promised. The little girl drifted to sleep, clutching Mr. Whiskers, her features peaceful in the soft glow of the nightlight. Olivia lingered in the doorway, watching her chest rise and fall, with each breath marveling at how quickly this child had claimed space in her heart. On the balcony later, Olivia and Marcus sat in comfortable silence, city lights twinkling around them. A strange peace had settled over Olivia, not the exhausted emptiness that had once passed for contentment, but something genuine and warm. The day had brought resolution of a sort, though countless questions remained unanswered. "I need to get my own place," Olivia said finally. "I can't keep imposing on you both." Marcus nodded, understanding her need for independence, even as their connection deepened. "There's a vacant apartment in this building, 2 floors down. Nothing fancy, but the location has certain advantages." The suggestion hung in the night air, neither pushing nor pulling, but simply offering possibility. Close enough for daily connection, but separate enough to build something intentional rather than circumstantial. Olivia smiled, recognizing the wisdom in this balance. "I'll check it out tomorrow." As they sat watching the night deepen, a plan began forming in Olivia's mind, a first project for Bennett community that would merge her event planning expertise with her newfound appreciation for local connection. The community garden where she'd volunteered needed expansion, especially the children's section. A fundraising event could bring attention and resources while engaging neighborhood families. Olivia's thoughts raced with possibilities, her fingers itching for a notebook to capture ideas. Marcus watched her with amusement, recognizing the signs of creative energy taking hold. "I can see the wheels turning." "What are you planning?" Olivia shared her nascent concept ideas, flowing more freely than they had in years. Marcus listened, offering practical suggestions about local businesses that might participate, materials he could contribute, neighborhood networks they could tap. They talked late into the night, their conversation shifting seamlessly between the garden project, Emma's upcoming school science fun fair, and Marcus's furniture commission. Ordinary topics elevated by shared enthusiasm. Simple plans imbued with significance because they were building something together, not an empire or a brand, but a life composed of meaningful connections. When Olivia finally prepared for sleep, making up the couch that had become her temporary bed, she found herself reflecting on the strange path that had led her here. 2 weeks earlier, she'd been at the pinnacle of professional success, engaged to a man most would consider an ideal match, living in a penthouse overlooking the city. By conventional metrics, she'd achieved everything she'd set out to accomplish. Yet it had taken losing her footing, quite literally with a broken heel on a rainy street, to find solid ground. The irony wasn't lost on her. Success had never felt as authentic as this precarious new beginning. The following days brought rapid changes. Olivia secured the apartment 2 floors below Marcus's, a modest 2-bedroom with good light and a small balcony of its own. She retrieved essential items from her penthouse, but left most behind, preferring to start fresh with pieces that reflected her evolving sense of self. A carpenter's daughter herself, though she rarely spoke of her estranged family, Olivia had always appreciated fine craftsmanship. Now she commissioned Marcus to build key furniture pieces for her new home, working alongside him in the workshop to learn the basics of woodworking. The dining table they created together became the heart of her apartment, imperfect but authentic, bearing the marks of hands that had shaped it with care rather than machines programmed for precision. At Bennett events, the transition progressed more smoothly than anticipated. Many employees chose to join Olivia's community-focused division, attracted by the mission and her leadership style. The first project at a garden fundraiser, combining local food art and music, came together with an energy that reminded Olivia why she'd fallen in love with event planning in the first place. Emma flowed between the two apartments as if they formed a single home, bringing drawings for Olivia's refrigerator and leaving toys in both locations. Marcus respected the boundaries Olivia established, never assuming, but always welcoming deeper connection. They moved cautiously, both aware of Emma's watching eyes and the fragility of new beginnings. James made one attempt at reconciliation, arriving unannounced at Olivia's new office with promises of compromise. The conversation was brief but significant, Olivia recognizing the ambition that had drawn them together, but acknowledging that it was insufficient foundation for a shared life. The engagement ring remained with him, its absence from her finger feeling like freedom rather than loss. As spring blossomed into early summer, Olivia found herself standing in the community garden on a Saturday morning, directing volunteers with the same precision she'd once applied to corporate galas. Marcus worked nearby, installing raised beds for the children's section, while Emma proudly planted seedlings with other neighborhood kids. The elderly gardener who'd first welcomed Olivia approached, wiping soil from his hands. "You've done a remarkable thing here. Haven't seen the garden this alive in years." Olivia smiled, watching children and adults working side by side, the generations connecting through shared purpose. Sometimes the most valuable things we build aren't structures, but communities, places where people feel they belong. The old man nodded sagely. Sounds like you found that for yourself, too. Olivia's gaze drifted to Marcus, who looked up at that moment as if sensing her attention. Their eyes met across the garden, a silent communication that had developed over weeks of shared meals, conversations, and quiet evenings. Not love, not yet, but the sturdy foundation from which it might grow naturally without forcing or rushing. Emma bounded over her small hands covered in soil, her face alight with excitement. Miss Olivia, our seeds are all planted. Now we just have to water them and wait. Olivia crouched to the child's level, brushing a smudge of dirt from her cheek. The waiting is the hardest part, but that's how the best things grow slowly with patience and care. Marcus joined them, his expression softening as he watched the interaction. Emma tugged at his hand. Dad, can we have our Sunday dinner in the garden when the vegetables grow? The question referenced a tradition they'd established Sunday meals on Olivia's balcony when weather permitted, or around her handcrafted table when it didn't. Neighbors often joined them, bringing dishes and stories to share, creating community around food and conversation. Marcus glanced at Olivia, including her in the decision. I think that sounds perfect, but we'll need a garden table. Olivia's mind immediately filled with designs, a rustic outdoor table large enough for their expanding circle of friends. I've been practicing my woodworking. Maybe we could build it together. The suggestion encompassed more than furniture construction. Together they were building a life neither had anticipated. Marcus finding room in his grief-shaped existence for new joy, Olivia discovering the authenticity she'd sacrificed for success. Emma, perhaps wisest of them all, had simply recognized the possibility before either adult had dared acknowledge it. As the garden hummed with activity around them, Olivia looked at her soil-stained hands, so different from the manicured perfection she'd once maintained. These hands now created tangible things: furniture, gardens, meals, community. They held a child's small fingers steady, a carpenter's tired shoulders turned the pages of bedtime stories. They built a life measured not in acquisitions, but connections. In the distance, the Seattle skyline rose against a clear blue sky. Olivia could just make out her former penthouse windows, catching the sunlight like distant memories. That life hadn't disappeared. Part of her would always be the driven CEO who built something from nothing through sheer determination. But now that achievement existed in balance with other values, other measures of worth. Breaking to rebuild better. The phrase Marcus had used weeks ago echoed in her mind as she surveyed the garden taking shape around them. Sometimes the most beautiful creations emerge from what appeared to be destruction, a company reimagined, a career redirected, a life interrupted by rain and chance and courage. Emma tugged at both their hands, drawing them toward the seedlings she'd planted. You have to come see. I put in tomatoes and carrots and sunflowers. Together they followed the child's lead, bending to examine the freshly turned soil where possibilities lay hidden, waiting for the right conditions to emerge. Just like the seeds they'd planted, their shared future remained unwritten, not guaranteed but full of potential. Day by day, they were creating the conditions for growth, tending what mattered with patience and presence. And for now, that was enough. Summer unfurled across Seattle like a vibrant tapestry each day, adding new threads of color and connection to the lives intertwining around the community garden. 3 months had passed since Olivia negotiated the company restructuring, transforming both her career and personal life in ways she could never have anticipated on that rainy night when Marcus first found her. Bennett Community thrived under her leadership, securing partnerships with local businesses and nonprofits focused on neighborhood revitalization. The garden fundraiser had exceeded expectations, generating enough resources to expand into adjacent vacant lots. More importantly, it had created connections among residents who might otherwise have remained strangers despite living side by side for years. Olivia's apartment had evolved from sparse functionality into a warm, inviting space that reflected her emerging identity. Handcrafted furniture built with a Marcus filled the rooms, a bookshelf holding volumes on gardening and community development alongside business strategy, a coffee table bearing the marks of Emma's art projects, a dining set that hosted increasingly crowded Sunday dinners. The relationship between Olivia and Marcus developed with deliberate patience, neither rushing nor resisting the natural progression from friendship to something deeper. They moved cautiously, mindful of Emma's watchful eyes and the complexities of building something genuine amid the ruins of past losses. Emma thrived in the expanded circle of care, bouncing between the two apartments with confident belonging. Her second grade year ended triumphantly with an award for her science project on plant growth research conducted in the community garden under Olivia's guidance. Summer brought freedom from school routines, days spent exploring parks and museums, evenings watching fireflies from the balcony while Marcus told stories of his firefighting days. On a particularly golden afternoon, Olivia stood in the community garden's children's section, supervising a group of neighborhood kids as they harvested the first vegetables from their plots. Emma moved among the younger children with the authority of experience, demonstrating how to pull carrots without damaging the greens. Olivia checked her watch, nearly time for the garden committee meeting, where they would discuss expansion plans. The project had outgrown its original scope, becoming a cornerstone of Bennett Community's mission to foster connection through shared experiences. A shadow fell across her clipboard, and Olivia looked up to find Marcus watching her with undisguised admiration. He'd come directly from his workshop, sawdust still clinging to his t-shirt, a testament to the custom furniture business that had grown alongside Olivia's new venture. "You've created something remarkable here. This garden was just dirt and weeds 3 months ago." Olivia surveyed the flourishing plots with satisfaction tinged by humility. "I just provided structure and resources. These families did the real work." Marcus shook his head, a gentle correction. "You gave them permission to build something together. Sometimes that's the most important contribution." The observation lingered between them, applying to more than community gardening. Over months of careful cultivation, they had built something. Neither had been seeking a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than strategic advantage or desperate need. Emma bounded over proudly, displaying a misshapen carrot cradled in soil-stained palms. "Look what I grew. Can we eat it for dinner?" Marcus ruffled her curls, careful not to dislodge the flower crown someone had woven for her. "That's the perfect size for our stew tonight." A chorus of voices called from across the garden, the committee members arriving for their meeting. Olivia handed her clipboard to Marcus. "Could you take Emma home to start dinner? I'll join you after the meeting." The simple request contained layers of established trust and shared responsibility. Marcus nodded, gathering Emma and her harvest basket with practiced ease. "The meeting shouldn't take long. We'll wait to eat together." As they departed, Olivia watched them, this man and child who had unexpectedly become central to her existence. 3 months ago, she couldn't have imagined finding fulfillment in community gardens, in homemade stew and bedtime stories, in Sunday gatherings around a handcrafted table. Success had meant something entirely different, then measurable in profit margins and client portfolios rather than carrots grown by small hands or neighborhoods revitalized through collective effort. The committee meeting proceeded efficiently, members reporting on various aspects of the garden's development. Expansion plans were approved, including a proposal to add a small farmers market where gardeners could sell or exchange excess produce. As discussion concluded, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Meeting ran long. Don't worry, still waiting for you." Gathering her materials, Olivia bid goodbye to committee members and headed toward the apartment building she now called home. Twilight softened Seattle's edges, streetlights flickering to life as she walked familiar blocks. Neighbors greeted her by name, the elderly couple walking their terrier, the teenager who babysat Emma, occasionally the owner of the corner market where she now shopped for ingredients rather than ordering grocery delivery. Approaching the building, Olivia noticed James's luxury sedan parked at the curb, its sleek lines incongruous against the modest surroundings. Her stomach tightened instinctively. Since finalizing the business restructuring and returning her engagement ring, she'd maintained strictly professional contact with her former fiancé. Their paths rarely crossed, deliberate scheduling on her part to minimize interaction while the wounds of separation healed. What could have brought him to her neighborhood, to her home? The question propelled her up the stairs with quickened steps. As she rounded the third-floor landing, voices drifted from her apartment door, which stood slightly ajar. Marcus's deep tones contrasting with James's clipped precision. Olivia paused in the hallway, not intending to eavesdrop, but unwilling to interrupt without understanding the situation. James's words carried clearly through the gap. "I didn't expect to find a family dinner when I came looking for Olivia. Quite the domestic scene you've created here." Marcus's response came measured, neither defensive nor confrontational. "Emma and I were just preparing dinner. Olivia should be back soon if you'd like to wait." A pause followed, filled with unspoken assessment. James broke the silence, his voice carrying the smooth confidence that had once impressed Olivia in boardrooms and charity galas. You know, I've been curious about the man who managed to derail a 10-year career trajectory and an engagement in the span of a few weeks. I expected someone more extraordinary. The deliberate insult hung in the air. Olivia moved to intervene, but Marcus spoke before she could enter. I didn't derail anything. Olivia made her own choices. She always had that capacity, someone just needed to remind her. The simple defense free from defensiveness or posturing captured exactly why Marcus had become essential to her new life. He saw her agency where James had seen only compliance, her humanity where others had seen only capability. Olivia pushed the door open, fully drawing both men's attention. James stood in her living room, designer suit immaculate, despite the summer heat, while Marcus remained near the kitchen doorway, Emma visible behind him, setting the table. James, this is unexpected. What brings you here? He stepped forward, professional, smile not quite reaching his eyes. The Wellington account. They're insisting on working with you personally for their anniversary gala. I've tried to redirect them to our corporate team, but they're being rather stubborn. The explanation made sense on a business level, but his presence in her apartment, rather than a message or office meeting, suggested additional motives. Olivia maintained professional composure, gesturing toward her dining table, the one she and Marcus had built together, now set for three with mismatched plates and a mason jar of wildflowers from the garden. We can discuss it over dinner if you'd like to join us. We're having vegetable stew with garden-fresh carrots. The invitation was polite but pointed, acknowledging his business purpose while firmly establishing the boundaries of her new life. James glanced at the humble table, the simple meal preparation visible in the kitchen, Emma watching curiously from behind Marcus. The contrast with their former lifestyle exclusive restaurants and catered events could not have been more pronounced. I wouldn't want to intrude on your domestic arrangements. Perhaps we could schedule a proper meeting at the office tomorrow. Olivia nodded, recognizing the retreat for what it was, not just from dinner, but from the reality of her transformation. I'll have Camille set something up. Was there anything else? James hesitated, his gaze sweeping the apartment one final time, noting the photographs on the wall. Olivia with Marcus and Emma Ball at the garden opening, the three of them hiking in nearby mountains, a candid shot of Olivia teaching Emma to knead bread dough. Evidence of a life constructed without him, built on values he'd never prioritized. You seem, different. I assumed this was a phase that you'd eventually realize what you'd given up, but you actually appear content with all this. The observation contained both wonder and dismissal. Olivia smiled, neither apologizing for her choices nor diminishing his. Not different, James, just more fully myself than I've been in years. After James departed, an awkward silence filled the apartment. Marcus resumed dinner preparations while Emma, sensing the tension, became unusually quiet. Olivia joined them in the kitchen, washing her hands at the sink. I'm sorry about that. I didn't expect him to show up here. Marcus stirred the stew, his expression thoughtful rather than troubled. It's your home. You don't need to apologize for who visits. The response exemplified what Olivia had come to value most about him, his ability to distinguish between genuine responsibility and unnecessary apology, to acknowledge complexity without assigning blame. She moved beside him, shoulder brushing his as she reached for bowls. It is my home. But what happens here affects you and Emma too. The acknowledgement of their intertwined lives hung between them, neither pushing for definition nor retreating from connection. Emma broke the moment, climbing onto a chair to reach the breadbasket. Did that man used to be your boyfriend? The one in the pictures at your old apartment? The directness of children cutting through adult prevarication to the heart of matters. Olivia helped Emma down, buying a moment to formulate an appropriate response. Yes, he was. We worked together and we were going to get married, but we realized we wanted different things from life. Emma considered this with serious concentration, like how Dad wanted to build furniture instead of being a firefighter after Mom died. Marcus paused in his stirring, the comparison striking unexpected depths. Something like that squirt. Sometimes people need different things at different times in their lives. Emma accepted this with the resilience of childhood, more interested in dinner than adult complications. The stew's ready now. Can we eat? I'm starving. The meal proceeded with Emma dominating conversation, recounting garden adventures and displaying each vegetable before allowing it to be consumed. Beneath the surface, normalcy, Olivia sensed Marcus processing the encounter with James, measuring himself against a man who represented everything he was not, wondering perhaps if Olivia might someday regret exchanging corporate success for community gardens and handcrafted furniture. After Emma went to bed, they retreated to the balcony, their established location for adult conversations. Seattle spread before them, lights twinkling against the deepening night sky. The space between their chairs had gradually decreased over months, physical proximity reflecting emotional connection. Olivia spoke first, addressing the unvoiced concerns. James represents a life I chose deliberately and excelled at, but it never made me happy. Not really. I was good at it, so I assumed that was enough. Marcus contemplated this, his profile illuminated by ambient city light. Being good at something isn't the same as it being good for you. The distinction resonated beyond career choices. Olivia had been good at her relationship with James, too fulfilling expectations playing her role in their power couple dynamic. The skillful performance had masked the absence of genuine connection, of the quiet joy she now found in everyday moments with Marcus and Emma. A thought occurred, prompting a question she'd never asked directly. Do you miss being a firefighter? The adrenaline, the clear purpose, the heroism of it. Marcus considered this carefully, respect for her question, evident in his thoughtful silence before answering. Sometimes. But I don't miss who I was becoming after Rebecca died, someone defined by what he'd lost rather than what remained. He turned to face her, fully moonlight, catching the silver strands beginning to appear at his temples. Stepping away from firefighting wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about finding a different way to build something meaningful. Through Emma, through my work, and now through whatever this is becoming between us. The acknowledgement hung in the night air, their first direct reference to the relationship developing beyond friendship. Neither had pushed for labels or declarations, allowing feelings to evolve naturally amid the practical realities of building intertwined lives. Olivia reached across the narrowing space between their chairs, her fingers finding his in the darkness. I'm not looking backward, Marcus. Not at James or Bennett Corporate or any of it. What I've found here with you and Emma, with the community we're building, it's more real than anything I achieved before. The simple contact of their hands conveyed more than elaborate declarations could have expressed. They sat in companionable silence, the distant sounds of the city creating a backdrop for unspoken understandings and tentative hopes. Days passed in the established rhythms of their evolving lives. Olivia balanced Bennett community responsibilities with increasing involvement in Marcus and Emma's daily routines. The Wellington account meeting with James proceeded professionally, both maintaining the cordial distance of former partners who respected boundaries. Summer stretched languorously toward autumn, the community garden yielding abundant harvests that became centerpieces of Sunday gatherings. On a particularly warm Saturday, Marcus received an emergency call from a client, water damage, threatening a nearly completed dining set that needed immediate attention. Olivia volunteered to take Emma for the day, suggesting a visit to the lake where the child had been begging to swim. The outing began perfectly, a picnic lunch splashing in the shallows, building elaborate sandcastles with architectural precision that reflected both Emma's creativity and Olivia's organizational skills. As afternoon shadows lengthened, Emma ventured slightly deeper, practicing swimming strokes Olivia had taught her in the controlled environment of the community pool. Olivia watched from the shore, arranging their belongings for departure, when a motorboat passed too close to the swimming area, creating unexpected waves. One moment, Emma was visible, paddling confidently. The next, she disappeared beneath the surface, the unexpected turbulence overwhelming her developing swimming abilities. Terror seized Olivia's heart as she launched into the water, all thought suspended in the primal need to reach the child. Seconds stretched into eternity as she swam toward the spot where Emma had vanished, desperate eyes scanning the rippling surface. Other swimmers noticed her panic, moving to help, but Olivia reached the location first, diving beneath the waves with lungs burning and pulse thundering. Visibility underwater was poor, sunlight filtering through murky depths. Olivia's hands searched blindly until they contacted fabric Emma's swimsuit. She pulled the child upward, breaking the surface with a gasping cry that was part prayer, part command. Breathe, Emma, breathe. Emma sputtered and coughed, water streaming from her mouth and nose, but her eyes opened, dazed, frightened, alive. Olivia clutched her close, swimming one arm toward shore where concerned onlookers had gathered. A man who identified himself as a doctor helped them onto the beach, quickly examining Emma, while Olivia trembled with adrenaline and residual terror. The doctor confirmed what Olivia had already assessed. Emma had swallowed water, but was breathing normally, conscious and responsive. No immediate danger, though. Monitoring for secondary drowning symptoms would be prudent. Olivia wrapped Emma in towels, holding her close as the child's shivering gradually subsided. "I thought I was a good swimmer," Emma whispered, shock, giving way to disappointment in her own abilities. "I got scared when the wave pushed me down." Olivia stroked wet curls away from the small face, her own heart still racing. "Even good swimmers need help sometimes. That's why we never swim alone, remember?" "Ma," Emma nodded solemnly, then looked up with wide eyes. "Are you going to tell Dad? He'll be worried." The question revealed Emma's understanding of adult concerns, her desire to protect her father from additional fears after already losing her mother. Olivia considered her response carefully, balancing honesty against unnecessary alarm. "We need to tell him what happened so he can watch for any signs you're not feeling well later. But we'll also tell him how brave you were and how you remembered your swimming lessons when it mattered most." Emma accepted this, curling against Olivia's chest with the trust of a child who felt completely safe despite recent danger. The incident had lasted mere minutes, but it shifted something fundamental in Olivia's understanding of her place in their lives. The visceral fear she'd experienced wasn't abstract concern for someone else's child. It was the gut-wrenching terror of potentially losing someone essential to her own existence. Marcus arrived at the emergency room where they'd gone as a precaution, his face pale with concern beneath the controlled exterior he maintained for Emma's benefit. The child had been examined and cleared no signs of respiratory distress or other complications, but doctors recommended overnight observation given her age. In the hospital corridor outside Emma's room, where the child finally slept after the excitement, Marcus leaned against the wall, emotions he'd suppressed for Emma's sake now visible in the slump of his shoulders and trembling hands. "When they called me saying you had brought Emma in after a swimming accident, all I could think was that I couldn't lose her too. Not after Rebecca." Olivia moved beside him close enough to offer support without demanding he accept it. "I was so scared, Marcus. One second she was there, the next. I've never felt terror like that." The admission revealed her heart more clearly than any declaration of love could have. Marcus studied her face, reading the depth of her feelings for Emma, not dutiful care for a partner's child, but genuine, profound love, independent of any relationship with him. "You saved her. Without hesitation, without thought for yourself." Olivia shook her head, unwilling to accept heroism for what had been instinctive rather than calculated. Any decent person would have done the same. Marcus took her hand, his grip conveying emotions words couldn't adequately express. "But you did it, and that matters to me more than I can say." The hospital room became their world overnight. Marcus dozing in the recliner beside Emma's bed, Olivia curled uncomfortably in a standard chair. Neither willing to leave, even though doctors had assured them the observation was merely precautionary. Emma slept peacefully, the adventure already transforming in her mind from frightening reality to dramatic story she would eventually tell with embellished details. Morning brought discharge papers and a pediatrician's reassurance that Emma had suffered no lasting effects beyond a valuable lesson about water safety. The child bounced back with resilience, chattering about breakfast options and whether her near-drowning experience qualified her for ice cream before noon. As they prepared to leave, a nurse entered with final instructions and paperwork. She smiled at the trio, addressing Olivia directly. "You'll want to watch for any coughing or breathing changes over the next few days, Mom. Kids can sometimes develop symptoms hours after a water incident." The assumption went uncorrected by any of them. Olivia signed the discharge papers listed as parent, guardian, without elaboration. In the parking lot, Emma skipped between them, holding both their hands and swinging herself forward with each step. The child showed no awareness of having nearly slipped away from them forever, her consciousness already refocused on present pleasures and future plans. Back at the apartment building, Emma insisted she felt perfectly fine and wanted to visit her garden plot to check on the pumpkin she was growing for Halloween. Marcus reluctantly agreed after confirming Olivia would accompany her, his protective instincts heightened by the recent scare. In the garden, watching Emma carefully measure her pumpkin's circumference with a string, Olivia contemplated how thoroughly her life had transformed in less than 6 months. From corporate executive to community organizer. From James's strategic partner to Marcus's. What they still hadn't defined their relationship explicitly, allowing it to evolve organically through shared experiences and gradual integration. But yesterday's terror had clarified something Olivia had perhaps known, but hadn't fully acknowledged. Her feelings for Emma existed independently of her relationship with Marcus. She loved this child wholly separately from romantic attachments or convenient arrangements. If things ended with Marcus tomorrow, losing Emma would devastate her just as profoundly. The realization brought both clarity and complication. What did it mean for their carefully constructed balance? For the boundaries they'd established to protect Emma from potential disappointment if adult relationships shifted? For Olivia's own identity, now inextricably linked to a child who wasn't legally or biologically hers? That evening, after Emma finally succumbed to sleep despite protests that she wasn't tired at all, Olivia and Marcus retreated to her apartment's balcony. The night carried a hint of autumn's approach, a subtle cooling that suggested summer's end drew near. They sat closer than usual, the day's events having eroded some invisible barrier between them. "The nurse called me Mom today," Olivia said, finally giving voice to thoughts that had preoccupied her since the hospital. "I didn't correct her," Marcus nodded, unsurprised by her observation. "I noticed." Emma didn't seem bothered by it either. The simple acknowledgement opened space for deeper conversation. Olivia gathered courage for questions that needed asking, regardless of potential discomfort. "What are we doing, Marcus?" "With each other, with Emma. We've been careful not to define things, to let them develop naturally. But after yesterday," she paused, organizing thoughts too important for imprecision. "When Emma disappeared under that water, I realized something. I'm not just falling in love with you. I've already fallen in love with your daughter, completely irrevocably. And that terrifies me." Marcus reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers in silent affirmation before responding. "Why does that scare you?" Olivia stared at their joined hands, finding words for fears she'd barely acknowledged to herself. "Because what if something changes between us? What if you decide this isn't working, or I somehow fail at being what either of you needs? I'd lose both of you, and I don't think I could bear that." The vulnerability of the admission hung between them. Olivia Bennett, who had navigated corporate politics and multi-million-dollar negotiations without flinching, revealing that her greatest fear was now losing the connection to a carpenter and his daughter. Marcus considered her words with characteristic thoughtfulness, neither dismissing her concerns nor rushing to provide easy reassurance. "I can't promise that nothing will ever change. Life doesn't work that way. We both know that too well." He shifted to face her more directly, moonlight illuminating the earnestness in his expression. "But I can tell you this, what's growing between us isn't casual for me. It's not convenience or circumstance. It's choice, deliberate daily choice to build something lasting." His free hand lifted to brush a strand of hair from her face, the gesture achingly tender. "And Emma loves you not as a temporary figure or a substitute, but as someone essential to her world. Whatever happens between you and me, that connection deserves protection and respect." Olivia leaned into his touch, the simple contact grounding her amid emotions too vast for complete articulation. "What does that mean practically?" "For us, for our arrangement," Marcus smiled slightly at her instinct to seek concrete parameters even for matters of the heart. "It means we keep doing what we've been doing, building something day by day honestly and intentionally. But maybe with less pretense that we're just friends who happen to be raising a child together." The assessment cut through months of careful navigation around their deepening connection. Olivia felt laughter bubble up unexpectedly, releasing tension she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. "That's a fair point. We haven't been just friends for quite some time, have we?" Marcus's smile broadened, his eyes crinkling at the corners in the way that had become increasingly precious to her. "Not since you tried to teach me about proper knife skills in the kitchen, and I pretended to need more help than I did just to stand close to you." The admission surprised her. Marcus, who always seemed so straightforward, confessing to his own strategic maneuvering in their dance of growing attraction. Olivia shifted closer, eliminating the remaining space between them. "I've been overthinking everything, haven't I?" Marcus tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering. "You wouldn't be the woman I'm falling in love with if you didn't analyze every angle." The declaration, offered without fanfare, but with absolute sincerity, settled into the space between them, not a revelation but an acknowledgement of what had been developing for months. Olivia leaned forward, closing the final distance between them. Their kiss held the warmth of familiarity, despite being relatively new. as if they'd known each other far longer than the span of months since that rainy night. When they separated, Olivia rested her forehead against his eyes closed to better absorb the moment's significance. There's no corporate strategy for this, you know. No 5-year plan or quarterly goals. I'm completely out of my element. Marcus laughed softly, the sound vibrating between them. That makes two of us. But I've found that the best things in life don't follow business models. They grow more like your garden, with attention and care and patience, but with plenty of room for the unexpected. The metaphor perfectly captured their unfolding relationship, not engineered, but cultivated, allowing for natural development rather than forced outcomes. Olivia settled against him, head resting on his shoulder, as they watched the city lights shimmer against the night sky. The future remained unwritten, complex questions about their arrangement still unanswered. But in that moment, the particulars seemed less urgent than the certainty growing between them, the knowledge that whatever came next, they would face it together and intentionally building something authentic from the unexpected foundation laid when Marcus had stopped to help a stranger in the rain.